Hello and welcome to the class. My name's Daniel, and today we're going to be looking at paraphrasing in the IELTS reading exam. If you have a question for us after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is the first of two classes and will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to look at how synonyms can be used to paraphrase, and then we're going to look at how word families can be used to paraphrase. So by the end of the session, you'll be more familiar with those two concepts and how they're used in the IELTS reading. During the class, there'll be questions for you to answer. These will appear below the video. I'll tell you when you need to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for each one. So let's start with what is paraphrasing. Well, the first two things we need to understand are synonyms and word families. Paraphrasing uses both of these, and we're going to cover these right now. So let's start with synonyms. First, we need to know what is a synonym exactly. So a synonym is a word that has the same meaning as another word. Let's take a look at some examples. Well, you could have the word big, and a synonym for big is large. Equally, you could have the word company. A synonym for company is business. And here we've got very important, and a synonym for very important could be crucial or vital or essential. So there's three synonyms there for very important. Now, synonyms don't just have to be one word. Like here, very important is two words and crucial is one word. So it could be two words, three words, four words, but it's a word or phrase that has the same meaning as another word or phrase. So let's now look at what a word family is exactly. Well, a word family is a group of words that are related, but only their word type or word class is different. What I mean by word type or class is if it's a verb or a noun or an adjective or an adverb, that type of thing. That's called the word class. Let's see some examples. Well, we can see here we've got the verb produce, and that, as I say, is a verb. Now, if you wanted to take produce and change it to a noun, you'd have the word product. That's the noun for a singular thing. Equally, you could change it to an adjective and you'd get productive, or you could change it to an adverb and you would get productively. Now, these are not the same word, but they are all related, so we call them a word family. Let's look at one more. So we've got technology here. Now, technology is a noun. We can change technology to technological, which is an adjective, and we can change it to technologically, which is an adverb. Or you can change it a little bit more with something like high tech. The tech bit here is still related to technology, and that's another adjective. So this is another example of a word family. They're not the same word, but they are related. So let's come back to that thing we started with, which is paraphrasing. So what is paraphrasing then? Well, it's using synonyms and word families that we just spoke about to change the words in a sentence so that it looks different, but it has the same meaning, okay? That's really key. It looks different, but it has the same meaning, okay? So the whole sentence could be changed. Let's see some examples. So we've just seen all of these words before. We saw the word big, company, we saw the word very important, and technological and products. So using synonyms and word families, we can paraphrase this sentence. Now, here's what it would look like. So Sony is a large business that produces vital technology. Let's go through it bit by bit. So we'll start with big here. We've changed it to large. Great. That's using synonyms. Company and business, as we saw before, they are synonyms. Now, instead of makes products, we've taken the noun products and we've moved it to the verb position. We've changed it into a verb, produces. So we've changed the noun, the verb noun combination, make products, and we've just changed it into one verb, produces. Then we've got very important and vital is the synonym for that. And finally, technological. Well, we can't put technological here because it's an adjective. So we have to take technological and we need to change it to a noun for technology. So when you're using word families, the grammar has to change. When you're just using synonyms like big, large, company, business, you don't have to change the order of the sentence. You can just replace the words directly with synonyms. But when you use word families like products, produces, and technological, technology, the grammar needs to change as well. So let's have a look at how paraphrasing is used in the IELTS. So we're going to see some examples of how synonyms are used here. So we're going to look at a text, part of a text about drones in filmmaking. So how these machines are used to make films. So the sentence we've got is, before drones, there were two options for capturing aerial shots, cranes and manned aircraft, both of which are still widely used in the film industry, but are not without their limitations. So that would be taken from the text. Now, if you were going to find a question about this text, if there was a sentence related to this text in the question, you wouldn't have just the same words. It would use some synonyms. So here is that sentence again. Now, we're going to just focus on one word here, just to start with as an example. We're going to focus on the word options. And what we're going to look at are some synonyms for options. But we're going to see how context is very important for knowing which words are synonyms. So, options, often you can say ways for options. You could also say methods, possibilities, selections, and opportunities. Now, in different situations, all of these are synonyms for options, but we only want to focus on which are synonyms for this context. So what we need to do is replace the word options here and see if the sentence still makes sense. So before drones, there were two ways for capturing aerial shots. A way is how you do something. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. You could say there are two ways for capturing aerial shots. Now, ways and methods, they are exactly the same meaning. So methods would also be a synonym here. You could say before drones, there were two methods for capturing aerial shots. So that works perfectly. Now let's have a look. Before drones, there were two options for capturing aerial shots, or possibilities for capturing aerial shots. Yeah, possible options or possible ways. You could just use the word possibilities in that situation. So this also works as a synonym. Now, before drones, there were two selections for capturing aerial shots. That doesn't really make much sense, because a selection is not a way of doing things. It's choosing from one of two things. So we're focusing on ways or methods here. So selections in this context doesn't really make sense as a synonym. And then the last one, we're looking at opportunities. Well, an opportunity is a chance or a possibility for doing something. It's not the same as a way or a method of doing something. So again, opportunities here would not work as a synonym. So you wouldn't see in the questions the words selections or opportunities, but you might see the words ways, methods, or possibilities. So let's see an example true, false, not given question from the IELTS. Could look like this. Before drones, there were two ways of capturing aerial shots. And you would have to read that sentence and say, is that true, false, or not given? So you'd highlight the most important words, and you'd look here, you'd say, before drones, there were 2 options for capturing aerial shots. Before drones, there were 2 ways of capturing aerial shots. Does that have the same meaning? Yes, it does. So this answer would be true for this one. Now, of course, that is a very, 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 very easy example because there's just one thing different. Everything else is the same. And that never happens in the IELTS. You will always have many words paraphrased, not just one word paraphrased. So that one was an easy example, but just to show you how they might write questions using synonyms. Now, we're going to have a bit of practice looking at another couple of synonyms in this same sentence. So what I'd like you to focus on first is the phrase manned aircraft, which we can see here. So I want you to look at question 1 below the video and answer which of these are synonyms for manned aircraft. Is it boats, high buildings, planes, helicopters, or towers? And I'm going to give you 10 to 15 seconds to try to answer that. Okay, so let's check this together. Well, the first thing we need to look at is it says manned aircraft. So it has to be things in the air. So a boat is not in the air. It is manned, but it's not in the air. Buildings, well, there's no one controlling a building. It doesn't fly. But planes, yes, they fly and they are manned. And helicopters also fly and are manned. Towers, again, they don't fly and they're not manned. So the 2 synonyms would be planes and helicopters for that one. Now look at question 2 below the video and find which of these are synonyms for the word limitations. And we can see the word here at the end of this sentence. So is it flaws, weaknesses, controls, problems, issues, or drawbacks? And again, I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, so we have to first think, what does limitations mean in this context? It says, but they're not without their limitations. Now, this doesn't mean limitations in the sense of restrictions. It means limitations in the sense of disadvantages. So we need to look at words that mean disadvantages or problems. So we can see here, well, problems is definitely one of them. Flaws also means problems or weaknesses, so those 2 both work. Controls, well, controls would be more similar to restrictions, and like I just said, it doesn't mean that in this context. But problems, yes. Issues means problems, so yes, and disadvantages or drawbacks, all of those would be good synonyms for the word limitations in this context. Now let's take a look at word families and sentence structure. So we're going to be looking at this sentence still, but this time we're going to be focusing on this phrase here, capturing aerial shots. And we're going to see how we can use word families to change this into similar sort of phrases, but using different grammar as well. So let's start with the first way of doing this. Well, here capturing aerial shots is a gerund. So it's a noun form of the verb with ing. It's got an adjective aerial and it's got a noun shots. Okay, so we could change it like this. So we've kept aerial shots the same, but we've taken the gerund and we've changed it into a noun, capture. Now, because we've got a noun here and then another noun here, we need to use of, and we've added the in there as well. So the capture of aerial shots has the same meaning, but we've just changed the word family a little. Another thing you could do is capturing shots aerially. So this time what we've done is we've just put capturing shots, that's not changed, but instead of having aerial as an adjective describing shots, we've got aerially as an adverb, and it's describing how it was captured. So it's referring to the gerund over here. Another way, you could say shooting aerially. So now we've taken the noun shots and we've changed it into a gerund. We've said shooting. So we're using the verb, but then we're changing it into a gerund. And then because we don't have a noun here, we have to change this to an adverb. So we've changed both of those things. So there's another way of using word families. You could say capturing aerial images. Now this isn't using word families. What we're using here is a synonym for shots. So shots and images have the same meaning. So instead of word family, we've used synonyms to change it. Or you could say capturing pictures and images and shots all have the same meaning. And then another way of saying aerial is from the sky. So we've used two synonyms here and no word families. So this one's using word families, so is this, so is this. And then these two are using synonyms. So let's have a bit of practice with this. Here's that sentence again. Now, which of these just use word families and word order, to paraphrase, are still widely used in the film industry? Again, you can see it here, are still widely used in the film industry. So I want you to have a look at that sentence and decide which of these, A, have a wide use in the film industry, B, the film industry still uses widely, C, are still widely used in the industry of filming, D, are still widely used for shooting films, and E, still have widespread application in making movies, are using just word families, to paraphrase. So I want you to choose the correct options below the video. I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for those. Okay, let's look now together. Well, let's start fresh. So it says here we've got widely used. Okay, we've got an adverb and we've got a verb. Now A changes that. It says have a wide use. So it's changed use to a noun, use from a verb to a noun, and widely from an adverb to an adjective. So you've got an adjective noun. In the film industry stays the same. The rest stays the same. So that does just use a word family. So that one's correct. The next, it says the film industry still uses widely. Okay, so are still widely used. Okay, here we've got uses, which is a verb, another verb form. And then widely, again, is an adverb. The rest has stayed the same. So it's just used word families, to paraphrase that. So that's another one. And then here we go, are still widely used in the industry of filming. So the film industry, the industry of filming, it's just moved those words around. So again, that's just using word families, to paraphrase. Now D, if we have a look, we can see that it's not just using word families. It's used here shooting films, and here it's the film industry. So that one is actually using synonyms, not just word families. And then finally it says widespread. Okay, widely and widespread, that's a word family. But use and application, that's synonyms. And the film industry and making movie, that's using synonyms as well. So that one's using synonyms and word families, to paraphrase. So the first three just use word families. Now, they're all correct. They're all very good paraphrases, but just the first three are using word families. Now, if you have any questions, please go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now, remember to take class 2 on this topic and to complete the online practice training and do the activities. Thank you very much for joining the class. We'll see you again. Goodbye. Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Daniel. And today we're going to be looking at paraphrasing in the IELTS reading. If you have a question after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is the second of 2 classes and will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to look at true, false, and not given questions and have some practice with those. And then we're going to turn our attention to yes, no, and not given questions. So by the end of this class, you should be more familiar with how to answer those 2 question types. During the class, there'll be questions for you to answer. These will appear below the video. I'll tell you when you need to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for each one. So let's have a look at how to answer true, false, not given questions. The first step is underlining keywords. So let's take this question here. So it says, before drones, if you were making a movie, you could only shoot images from the sky using helicopters, planes, and cranes. Now we need to first highlight the keywords in this to check what we're looking for. So what are keywords exactly? Well, the first thing is nouns and noun phrases to look for. So in this sentence, we have here drones, a movie is a noun, shoot images from the sky using helicopters, planes, and cranes. So those are all the nouns in there. So those would be some keywords. Also, other types of keywords are verbs and verb phrases. For example, making a movie is a verb phrase, and shoot images and use helicopters. So those would be the verbs in there. So you'd want to highlight them as well. As well as that, you could highlight adjectives. Now in here, there are actually no adjectives in this one, but in other questions, you would want to highlight the adjectives. And finally, we'd look at adverbs and adverb phrases. For example, before is an adverb, only, and from the sky is also an adverb phrase that we'd use there. So those are the things we mean by keywords. Now, usually in a question, you wouldn't do it one by one by one. You would just go, okay, 1, before drones, if you were making a movie, you could only shoot images from the sky using helicopters, planes, and cranes. So you would just move across like that. Now let's take a look at what we mean when we say what is true, what is false, and what is not given in the IELTS test. Well, a true sentence will paraphrase exactly the same information as the text. So it will have all of the information from the question will be contained in the text. If it's all in there, that means it's true. A false sentence will give opposite information to the text. So it will use paraphrasing, but it will have the opposite meaning to what's in the question. So you can say, okay, that's false. And then a not given sentence will give some of the same information in the text, but also some extra information which is not in the text. So with these sentences, it's impossible to say if it's true or not, as there's not enough information in the text to do this. And these questions also paraphrase the language in the text. So when you look at it and you look at the text, you're like, maybe, but I don't know. And it's impossible to say if it's a true or if it's a false in that situation. So that would be not given. Now let's look at how to answer one of these true, false, not given questions. So we have our underlined sentence here where we've chosen the keywords like we saw in the previous slides. And what we now need to do is look at the text here. This is the part of text we're going to look at and see if it is paraphrased. If it's all paraphrased, in which case it would be true. If it has a contradictory meaning, in which case it would be false, or if there's some extra information in there, in which case it would be not given. So let's start with before drones, because we can see that that is directly in here. We can also look at making a movie. That would be used in the film industry. Those are synonyms there. Okay, so it contains that bit. And we've got only using. And here we've just got two options. So that suggests there were only these two options. And then we have here shoot images from the sky. And again, we can see here we've got capturing aerial shots. And then we can look at helicopters, planes, and cranes. And here we've got cranes and manned aircraft. So we can see that all of this information is contained in the text. So this would be true. So as we see here, all the information is the same in the text. There's nothing that gives the opposite meaning. So this question is true. And that is how you would answer it. First, you'd highlight the keywords, then you'd look in the text and see if all of that information is contained in there. So let's have a little bit of practice then. Well, here is a new true, false, not given sentence. And the first step we need to do is to highlight the keywords. So we've got here the BBC were able to film images of the Costa Rican jungle from altitudes that had never been achieved before by using specialized drones. So those would be the key words there. And what we need to check it against is this part of the text. So what I would like you to do is look at question 1 below the video and see if you can choose if that's true, false, or not given. And I'm going to give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, let's check this together then. Well, we're going to go through from the start. So we've got the BBC here. Okay, so it says for the TV series Planet Earth 2, the BBC. Okay, perfect. We've got that in there. Then we've got film images. So use specially adapted drones to capture is the same as film images. Okay, good. Of the Costa Rican jungle. Okay, capture the Costa Rican jungle. So that's the same here. From altitudes, okay, we've got heights and altitudes is the same meaning, that had never been achieved before. And previously unreachable means never been achieved before. And then here we've got using specialized drones and used specially adapted drones. So those two have the same meaning. So we can see that everything in the question has been paraphrased in the text. So hopefully you chose the answer that this is true, because everything is paraphrased. Let's look at another example. So we're going to highlight the keywords here again at this one. So it says, following in the footsteps of other programs, Planet Earth 2 used drone technology to film the jungle in Costa Rica from such high altitudes. So again, we've highlighted the keywords first, and here is the text. And what I'd like you to do now is look at question 2 below the video and see if you can choose true, false, or not given for this one. Okay. Well, if we read this, we can see here it says for the TV series Planet Earth 2, so we've got Planet Earth 2 here. The BBC used specially adapted drones, so use drone technology to capture, again, we've got film, so that's fine, the Costa Rican jungle, the jungle in Costa Rica, the Costa Rican jungle, from previously unreachable heights, such high altitudes. Now, this bit here, following in the footsteps, that means that they copied another program. So following in the footsteps of other programs, they copied another program. Now here, this says it was previously unreachable. So if it was previously unreachable, that means no one had done it before. So copying another program and no one had done it before, they have completely opposite meanings. They are contradictory. So is it true, false, or not given? Well, because they're contradictory, they have opposite meanings. It must be false. So that one is false because of that part. Let's look at one more. So here we have Planet Earth 2 reached new heights by being the first program to film in the Costa Rican jungle using drones. So let's highlight the keywords. So Planet Earth 2 reached new heights by being the first program to film in the Costa Rican jungle using drones. So we've highlighted our keywords. And now here's the part of the text again. What I'd like you to do is look at question 3 below the video and see if you can say if it's true, false, or not given. And again, I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, well, let's go through it again. We got Planet Earth 2, and we can see here we've got Planet Earth 2 in here. It says there were reach new heights and previously unreachable heights. Could be the same meaning. But actually, if we look at this, they have two different contexts. So reach new heights meant achieve something new. And heights here is metaphorical, as previously unreachable heights means that they filmed from very, very high up in the sky. So they have slightly different meanings. By being the first program to film in the Costa Rican jungle using drones, well, we can see they captured the Costa Rican jungle and they used drones. But were they the first program to do it? Were they the first program to use drones? Well, we don't know. There's not enough information here. They were the first program to use drones from this height, but we don't know if they were the first program to use drones in the Costa Rican jungle. So, because we don't know, is it true, false, or not given? It's not given. There's not enough information for us to say yes, true, false. So it's not given. So let's now look at the difference between true, false, and not given questions, and another type of question, which is yes, no, and not given questions. They both appear in the IELTS reading. So let's look at what's the same about both of them. Well, in both of them, they require you to find paraphrased sentences and check their meaning. That's what we've just been doing on the previous slide. So highlighting the keywords and checking the meaning of them in the text. You have to do that for both of them. Now, the difference between true, false, and not given. Well, true, false, and not given are based on checking facts and seeing if they agree or disagree with the information in the text. Yes, no, and not given is based on checking opinions or beliefs of a writer of the text and other people in the text and seeing if they agree with the text. So one is about facts, and yes, no, not given is about opinions and beliefs and comparing those. Now, in the yes, no, not given, the sentences that you have to check have more language expressing opinion. So verbs like believe, think, feel, say, expect, guess, these kinds of verbs. Whereas in true, false, and not given, it will just be stating a fact like this is this or there are this. So things that are just either true or false. So that's kind of the main difference. Also, the IELTS reading that usually you get yes, no, not given questions is usually the reading 3, because that's often written from someone's perspective or from someone's point of view. So let's have a look at an example question. Well, here we've got the question and the part of the text that we're going to look at. So again, this procedure is the same as with true, false, and not given questions. So we still need to highlight the key words. So let's look at this together. It says the writer, and we can see it says believes. So there's one of those opinion verbs, that a large number of the scientific theories at that time were not very realistic. And what I'd like you to do is to look at question 4 below the video and see if you can choose if you think that is yes, no, or not given. I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, let's look together. So this is written from the writer's perspective. So the writer believes this is their opinion here. So we have to see that a large number of scientific theories at the time were not very realistic. So it says the scientific realm, okay, the scientific theories, from anthropology to zoology was full of, okay, so a large number of, that's the same, theoretical concepts or theories. So you can see it's used a word family here to paraphrase. It's changed theory to theoretical concepts. At the time were not very realistic. Again, we've got a large number of here and many of. And then not very realistic. Here we've got the adjective fanciful. And fanciful and not realistic have the same meaning. So we can see that all the parts of this sentence are paraphrased in the text. So is it yes, no, or not given? It's a yes, because all of it is paraphrased. So it's exactly the same process as with the true, false, not given. The only difference is that it's about the writer's opinions or people's opinions. Now, if you have any questions, remember you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now remember to complete the online training and do the practice activities. Thank you very much for joining the class. We'll see you again. Goodbye.